Greetings and welcome to the Old Dog Zendo at Iron Mountain and this edition of Dharma Dirt. In the last video, we dealt in a general way with practice in lay life and its challenges. The Buddha taught that one can advance in the way just as effectively in lay life as one can as a monastic. It's not about living as a monastic or lay person, but to practice your life and live your life as practice, regardless of the circumstances. In either case, you must let go of all desire for wealth, fame, pleasure, and even for enlightenment. Understand that it is not the possession of wealth or power that is the problem. It is the attachment to them, the desire to hang on and to accumulate more and more. For this talk, I want to address three aspects of morality and lay life. First, to avoid evil deeds and habits. Second, managing the workplace. And third, to support the family. The Buddha mentions 4 causes of evil from which we must refrain. These are actions that come from mental states and indicators of intent. They are attachment, ill will, folly or ignorance, and fear. While we speak of them as separate things, they are really intertwined, but we'll look at them one by one. First, attachment and desire. The Sanskrit word is chanda. This comes from attachment to the separate self, the inability to let go of those aspects of life that reinforce the self. Clinging and grasping at all that worldly stuff, fame, fortune, comforts, the constant round of getting and spending. This thirsting desire is also about comparison, envy, and covetousness. Second, ill will, dosa. This is acting out of anger, hatred, or aversion toward others and situations. We all know what that feels like. Disappointment in our expectations and desires can lead to lashing out, blaming, even leading to violence, as we're now seeing in the streets of major cities. But more often, I think, to a long, simmering resentment that poisons relationships and your entire life. Third is fear, bhaya. This is ultimately the fear of death, of not being. This fear comes up any time the ego self is threatened with loss. A divorce, loss of job, or the loss of one's wealth, the death of a loved one. The reason that the cancel culture is so powerful is that it is banishment, a kind of surrogate death penalty. You become an unperson. If a tree falls in a forest and no one hears, is there a sound? If no one recognizes you, do you still exist? And fourth, folly or ignorance, moha. This is acting out of false views and lack of understanding of reality. The term is usually related to ignorance of the basics of Buddhism, that is, the Four Noble Truths, the nature of suffering, its origin, extinction, and the path to its extinction. We also build up false views from our likes and dislikes. The notion that the world can be made as I will it to be. Ignorance as a cause enables the other three. If one truly understands reality, then there's no longer any desire or hatred or fear. Now, thoughts and emotions arise willy-nilly of themselves. We can't control them. But we can let go of them and refuse to act on them. Desire, dislike, fear come up when they want to, not when we want them to. Apologies to Nietzsche. When they first arise, they have no object. And there is in that moment of arising a cognitive dissonance. There has to be something to desire or to dislike or to fear. So we cast around until we find an object to fear or desire or hate. And then we focus on what we think is the object of desire and so on. But that never works. Even if we are momentarily successful, the mind will simply find another object. We have to focus on the desire itself, or the hatred or the fear. In doing so, with persistence and a degree of courage, we see the ultimate nature of these things is empty. Why are these causes so difficult to deal with? Because they define the self. They are the self. This separate ego self is desire, hatred, fear, and ignorance. Think about it. If you no longer desire, dislike, or fear anything, who are you? What are you? This is where humility arises. If one can stop taking this self seriously, one can begin to function as an adult. Our practice is not to abolish the self or its four causes, but to see them clearly, to acknowledge them and let them go. Now you might think that the causes themselves have causes, and these causes have causes, and there's a kind of Freudian analysis is called for. No, the important thing is to just experience the attachment, the ill will, the folly, or fear, as it is. Don't look for a cause. If you look for causes, you will be following a never-ending skein of causes. To observe any one of these causes carefully will weaken it to the point where it no longer controls your actions. This is true of all emotions and feelings. It's not easy, especially with fear. It takes persistence and no small amount of courage to let go of fear. So as we work to let go of these four causes, what about living a decent life as a layperson? The general rule is, do not waste your substance. This is not just about money or property, but wasting your body and mind as well. Don't waste the substance of your life doing frivolous things. One genius of the Buddha was that he could break things down into bite-sized pieces that we can handle. So he said that there are 6 ways of wasting one's substance: addiction to strong drink and sloth-producing drugs, haunting the streets at unfitting times, attending fairs, addiction to gambling, keeping bad company, and habitual idleness. So let's look at these. Don't become addicted to drink or drugs. We know how damaging alcoholism and drug addiction is, not just to the addict, but in the destruction of family, loss of friends, sickness, diminished mental capacity, as well as the enormous burden on society, to name just a few. The most recent literature I've read indicates that even moderate drinking has few redeeming qualities. Alcohol damages the nervous system and the gut, even in small quantities. And of course, other drugs can be a whole lot worse. Even marijuana, long thought to be harmless, causes long-term brain damage, especially in young people, to say nothing of the ravages of heroin, cocaine, meth, fentanyl, and the list goes on. Don't haunt the streets at unfitting times. We know the dangers of hanging out at night in the big city. Those dangers existed in the Buddha's time as well. Even if you yourself do nothing wrong, your family is left unprotected. You may be accused of crimes, even if innocent. Nightlife is generally not healthy for a family. Don't hang out with others late at night when you should be home. Don't frequent fairs. These days, a fair seems like a safe family outing. But when having a day at Disneyland or the county fair, it's important not to become distracted by the displays, the hawkers, the games, the rides. How many children have become lost or misplaced in the confusion of a crowded midway? As with many things, it's a matter of degree. Once or twice a year is one thing. Once a week is overdoing it. Don't get into the habit of attending a lot of entertainment venues, and that includes movies, concerts, dances, raves, and so on. It's the largest crowds that are also the riskiest. Don't become addicted to gambling. The Buddha recognized gambling as an addiction some 2,700 years ago. How many family tragedies result from gambling on everything from the horses to the casinos to the stock market? I heard a great example a few weeks ago. A person puts a coin in the slot machine and pulls the lever. Comes up with 2 cherries and a lemon. Now, the normal person will say, I lost, and go on to something else. A gambling addict will cry, look at that, I almost won. Which one will keep feeding the slot? Don't keep bad company. Look for friends, not drinking buddies. Be careful in choosing your friends. They're the ones who will tell you what you don't want to hear. Give good advice. Look after your possessions. Watch the house while you're out of town. A friend defends you against calumny and slander, but also points out when you're making a mistake. The one who always tells you what you want to hear is not your friend. A friend remains a friend through good times and bad. Of course, this is how also you are a friend to others as well. Be generous to them. Treat them as you would treat yourself. The golden rule long before Christ. Avoid habitual idleness. Contrary to a lot of popular opinion, work is necessary for life. Welfare programs that have no work or training requirements only perpetuate dependency, which can become generational. Work is what gives our lives meaning and dignity. Here's a famous story about work. Huang Bo was a Chan or Zen master in ancient China and the abbot of a large monastery. He always insisted on working every day in the fields along with the other monks. His disciples began to worry that the master was getting too old and frail for manual labor. So one day they hid his tools. That day, Huang Bo refused to eat. He refused to eat the next day and the next. In desperation, the monks gave him back his tools, and that day he worked in the field as before. That evening he gave a talk entitled, "A Day Without Work is a Day Without Eating." Not to have work is devastating to the human spirit. If one is without work, work may be found in negative ways: crime, drug dealing, prostitution. There are times when jobs are actually plentiful, yet a great many young people prefer to take unemployment benefits rather than work. This may seem attractive in the short run, but long term, it kills the soul. I suspect that the Buddha, as a young prince, discovered that idleness in the palace was actually pretty dreary, and it may well have been one of the incentives for his leaving the palace, to see how real people lived and worked. And this brings us to the workplace. Now, the work venue is a very different place than it was centuries ago. The Buddha referred to servants, who may have been household servants or field workers or scribes or even apprentices. There were no distinctions, but they were all employed, so I'm looking at them as employees. If you are an employer, assign work in proportion to the employee's abilities. That means you have to know your people as individuals. Pay a fair wage, and pay medical benefits. There was no other health insurance at the time. Provide bonuses and holidays. Sounds like an enlightened modern business. Not only is it the moral thing to do, it will certainly help retain valuable workers. The Buddha was a pragmatist. If you are an employee, arrive at work on time. Do your work well. Accept a fair wage. Make the workplace safe and prosperous. Even though safety is now considered the employer's responsibility, let's face it, it's everyone's concern. So about the family. In the last talk, I mentioned the Norman Rockwell vision of the family. The Buddha taught that in lay practice, family is paramount. Family, marriage, children, the full catastrophe. Even 2,700 years ago, the nuclear family was the cornerstone of society, economically, socially, and spiritually. And men, women, parents, and children each had their specific roles, and they are the traditional ones. As a husband, honor and respect your wife. Remain faithful to her. Put her in charge of the home. Give her gifts, jewelry, and so forth. As a wife, you should be efficient in running the household. Be chaste. Manage the household funds frugally and be skillful in all your duties. Take care of your parents. You were maintained by your parents when you were young, and you have the obligation to take care of them in their old age. Maintain family honor. Be worthy of your forebears and lineages. Now, these days, that seems quaint, and many people have no idea who their ancestors were, and sadly, they don't care. But family traditions help you define your place in the world. They can be valuable lessons or warnings. But even if you have no idea of your ancestry, let the family honor begin with you. Raise your children to be responsible adults. Restrain them from evil and encourage them to do good. See that they are educated in a skill or profession so they can earn their own living. Well, all that seems reasonable enough. But these days, parents often have to fight an uphill battle given the malign influences that permeate our culture. Public education is becoming more and more a matter of indoctrination and propaganda rather than teaching useful skills or coherent thinking. Universities and large corporations have had to institute training programs to teach new students and employees the skills and knowledge that were once taught in the public schools. Another major function of education that seems to have been lost recently was the development of character. Deportment and character were once standards listed on most report cards. This is a very good argument for homeschooling these days if one can manage it. Arrange a suitable marriage. This may seem hopelessly anachronistic. The arranged marriage is viewed as tyranny of the parents over their children, especially girls. But from the Buddha's time, even up to 150 years ago, children were married in their teens, so parental guidance would not be a bad thing. These days, young people have to generally make their own way in the courtship and marriage process. Okay, I'm not a marriage counselor, but keep in mind what George Bernard Shaw said. When two people are under the influence of the most violent, most insane, most delusive, and most transient of passions, they are required to swear that they will remain in that excited, abnormal, and exhausting condition continuously until death do them part. Okay, that's pretty extreme. But marriage consists of much more than a sudden romantic infatuation. It's a long-term partnership involving divisions of labor, child rearing, estate management. And it's about two people willing to continuously learn about and from each other. Transfer your children's inheritance to them at a suitable time. The Buddha was certainly not opposed to private property or the accumulation of generational wealth, as long as it was done honestly and honorably. There were families in the Buddha's time that were extraordinarily wealthy, same as now. They donated huge tracts of land and money and goods to the Buddha's Sangha, and he accepted them. Nowadays, there are all sorts of living trusts and other ways to manage the transfer of wealth from one generation to the next. The sutra never mentions an extended family, uncles, aunts, cousins, grandparents, and so forth. There's also nothing about a notion that it takes a village. The Buddha assumes the nuclear family, husband, wife, children. And even today, the sociologists will tell you that the road to happiness is finish high school, get a job and keep working, get married and stay married, have kids. Now, what the Buddha describes is the ideal. Not everyone has the karma to be born into or to be a part of that kind of family. And we all do the best we can. Did I do all those things? No, not by a long shot. But that in no way shut me out of the practice of the way. Regardless of your personal circumstances, the practice is open to anyone. So there it is. The Buddha did not teach, do your own thing. He taught a careful, sober, upright life. There is no mention anywhere that I can find of things like collective action, strikes, riots, demonstrations, boycotts, most of which seem to be driven by hatred, anger, and the desire to exert some illusion of control. Each one of us has to consider carefully as individuals what we do in both the private and public spheres and why we do it. We face a lot of challenges in a modern culture that were never imagined 2,700 years ago. But the principles of the Eightfold Path and the precepts remain the same and will remain. Spiritual practice is about how we live day to day, in harmony with others, and shouldering our own responsibilities. We're not trying for sainthood. Dogen said, "A person who advances in the way is an ordinary person." That's all we need. Together with all beings, we realize the way.